future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy WTF, and welcome. Tonight is going to be another mind mapping. This time we're going to be mind mapping our way out of sexual addiction, and we have a volunteer tonight who will be calling in just a few minutes. His name is, quote, Max, alias Max, and he has been suffering from sex addiction and is really suffering as a result of this, and he's experiencing a lot of pain and breakdown. And we're going to go through panels number 1, 2, and 3 with him tonight. And for those of you who are first-time viewers of Dr. Judy WTF, a little bit about me. I'm a clinical psychologist. I run the Psychological Healing Center in Sherman Oaks, California. I also created a mind map for healing human disconnect. And I'm going to explain this so that you can be with me in terms of following the process of creating a paradigm shift out of mental unhealth and into stability and healing. So please put the mind map up there and I will run through it and psychoeducate you. Thank you. And so the mind map is a pathway to healing. And this pathway is a 10-session psychoeducational therapeutic course, if you will, for anyone who is suffering on any level, suffering from anxiety, depression, relationship issues, OCD, ADD, any mental dis-ease, as I like to call it, because mental dis-ease, unless organic in nature, is a result of human disconnect. And when we're disconnected from, we go into pain and suffering. So if you look at the top row, you will see wounds, reactions, and encodings. And these wounds entail 5 main ones from childhood: sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal, emotional abuse, neglect, and smothering. And these wounds shadow over our ability to see straight and to grow, to perceptually digest the worldview and our view of ourselves properly. So what happens as a result of these childhood wounds is that our lens of perception on ourselves and the world begins to crack. And as a result of this, we then misperceive and react to the world and go into amygdala reactions. I call those reactions to the wound. And then we encode a lot of horrific, negative, core beliefs, messages about ourselves and the world's messages like I'm not good enough, I'm not competent, I'm a failure, and so on and so forth. And these messages then set us up for, if you will, is a breakdown. Because when someone, so to speak, pushes the button of panel 3 and activates our negative core belief, look what happens. 4, 5, and 6. Chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And the chaos can come in all formats. It can come in the form of relationship breakdowns, psychosomatic breakdowns, emotional breakdowns, financial breakdowns, and there are too many to really mention here. As we mind map Max tonight, you'll get a sense of what he has been set up for in terms of his childhood wounds, how he reacted to them, and then the encodings, and then we'll watch and follow the process the next time we meet here to unravel all of this negative encoding and help him morph through the process so that he can begin to express his emotions and heal. So this is the mind map. I also want to let everybody know that I am conducting a mind map seminar in September 14th, 15th, 16th. It's up on my website, Dr. Judy WTF. And if you register tonight, I'm actually offering some discount scholarships just for the next day. I would really like to meet my viewers. I know that you live in all parts of the world, and I'm going to make it possible for you to please come down and join us. And we're going to have an intensive course on mind mapping from through to. And we will be meeting Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Saturday 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Sunday 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., the 14th, 15th, and 16th at the beautiful Psychological Healing Center in Sherman Oaks. And if you need help financially, if you need some level of scholarship, please contact us and we'll be glad to discuss rates with you so that we can make it possible for you to be a part of the group. It also comes with the Mind Map video series and the book and lunch. So I hope to see you there. And with that said, I know that we're going to be having a call-in very soon. A little bit about sex addiction. Sex addiction, like any other form of addiction, is a process that activates parts of the brain that light up with neurotransmitters such as dopamine, and they activate the brain so strongly they create a sensation of pleasure, and people end up chasing this high. So whether it be drugs or food or gambling, it's a neural pathway that's created in the brain that is so potent that people keep chasing to get that feeling. And yes, I hope we have our call in. Hi, you are on the air with Dr. Judy.
Hi, Dr. Judy. This is Max.
Hi, thank you so much for calling in. I really want to thank you very much for being a part of this and being vulnerable and being really a help to other people. There are thousands, if not millions of people. I know there are millions of people who are struggling with sex addiction. So really very much appreciate your sharing tonight. And Max, as you know, we're going to be going through panel number 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Okay. And I know you've read the book, yes?
I started reading it. I'm still in the process of reading the book.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to do the real live version of this. And I want to remind you that if at any time you're not comfortable sharing something, let me know. And I'm going to try to keep it as comfortable for you as possible. I know that this is a very sensitive topic, and I'm going to limit the call-ins just so that we can get through a lot of material. Maybe I'll take 1 or 2 if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so panel 1 wounds, and I'll just touch on them, and then if you don't mind saying yay or nay to them, then we can understand who done it, what happened, and what your blueprint is like from the first 3 years of life. So as some of you know, the mind map is a way of shining the truth light on what happened, what precipitated this addiction, what's the backdrop to it. So we're going to look deeply into that. So Max, tell me a little bit about your first 3 years of life. Were you breastfed? Do you have that information?
I was, yes, I was.
You were breastfed, okay. Was your mother stay at home?
For a little while, I think for the first part.
The first part,
first,
okay.
First couple of years, at least that I can remember.
Okay. Was your father in the picture?
No, he wasn't.
Was not in the picture, okay.
No.
Did your mother leave him? Did he leave your mom? What was the disconnect there?
From my understanding, he left her.
Okay. And so if you can imagine, you and the audience can imagine how it must have been like for your mother to be left, right? Grieving your
Right.
father and having to raise a baby. Do you have any other brothers and sisters
Siblings. Yes, I have a few siblings, brothers and sisters.
from the same father?
No, different fathers.
Okay, okay. So your mother's been through some trauma, I'm imagining, being in relationship and out of relationship and in relationship and out of the relationship. How many children did she have?
Uh, 6.
Okay, that's a lot of children. And did any of the fathers stay around to raise the children?
A couple of them did for a period of time. It's kind of like in and out. I think, yeah, like in and out. That's how I describe it.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody that you felt was a male role model to you?
Uh, Not really. I mean, the closest I got was an uncle,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Okay.
but it wasn't like that's for a couple of years in my pre-adolescent stages. Um,
Okay.
but after that, not too much.
Okay. So, what's your mother like, or is she still alive? What was, or is she
Yeah,
like? She's
yeah,
alive.
she's still
Okay.
alive.
Okay.
Pretty. I mean, she was. It was kind of. I guess she was kind of like you would call a wild child
Mm-hmm.
at one point in her life, but then she kind of changed. Went through a transformation and became more spiritual or religious,
Okay.
and to this day she's very, I say, religious.
And what age were you when she became more spiritual and religious?
I don't remember exactly what age, but I was still a kid. It was still like I'd say pre-adolescent stage.
Okay. And did you adopt any of her religious, spiritual beliefs?
I did. I did. Yes.
Okay. And would you consider yourself a religious or spiritual individual?
I would. I'd say I'm more spiritual now than religious,
Okay.
but I still kept a lot of the religious um, mindsets, or you know, kind of like it's kind of like part of my core.
Okay. And
So I would say it's kind of, yeah.
do you think that it's served you well in life?
I think it did to a certain degree. Yes, yes, I do.
Okay, because we're going to use any pathway that brings light to you, including the spiritual pathway, which I don't often talk about because not everybody is on a religious or spiritual um, route. So if you are, then we'll just take advantage of that because ultimately, when people and places and things and drugs fail us, right, like they say in AA, many people turn to a higher power. And so let's just have that acknowledge that that is a pathway that you can also choose to connect to while you're doing your process, okay?
Right. Okay.
Okay. So, panel one wounds. We already have heard some of them. Clearly, no father figure. That's a big one. We have what I refer to as pillars. Pillars are the family structure. When things go right, we have a mother, a father, we have a system gone right with structure and some kind of an order and trickle down of father nurturing the nurturer, that would be your mother, and a stable family. And it seems like you did not have that stability. Does that accurately reflect your family?
Yep. Yes, it does.
Okay, and what number child were you?
Uh, Let me see. I have to count.
Okay,
I think number 4.
number 4. Okay, so by the time you came around, your mother must have been pretty exhausted in terms of not having a stable foundation and a man to rely on. And what were the economics? What were the economics of your family? Who supported the family?
Um, she pretty much did, but I had like an extended family as well. It was kind of like, you know, living with, yeah, I was living with uncles, aunts,
Okay.
cousins, and so it was kind of like we all lived together at one point
Okay, which is a
for a little
real,
while.
which could be a really good thing because an extended family will make up for a support system of a father figure that was lacking. Was it more positive, more negative? What would you make of the extended family?
I would say it was more positive. I mean, even like like my childhood memories are pretty positive. I don't have it wasn't perfect,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
Okay.
Uh, you know, there were negative things, but for the most part, it was positive. I can
Okay.
say that.
Okay. I was just wondering, my intuition just went to, were you very lonely as a little boy? Emotionally very lonely.
Yes, yes, I would say I was, especially maybe not as much as in my early childhood, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd say from maybe the time of 7 years old onward, I was very lonely. And I can even say this because I've listened to, having read some of your book and listened to different programs
Mm-hmm.
from this from this station. And I heard your program on the lost child,
Yes.
and I mostly identify with the lost child. Even when you did that program, it was like I was like, wow, that's me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Okay.
so I can pretty much identify with both the golden child as well and the lost child.
Okay. Okay. And how were you golden childed? How did your mother or family member put you up on a pedestal?
I was kind of like the goody two shoes
Mm-hmm.
uh, of the family,
Okay.
and it was so yeah. That's how I would identify. It was kind of like it was almost like be more like Max, be more like Max, you know,
And were
that type of
you
thing.
people pleaser? Do you remember? Um,
Oh
ma-
yeah,
okay, so people pleaser and golden child, which sometimes goes with people pleaser, and then on the other hand, also maybe not having enough people to relate to. I'm thinking your mother was working, she had to make a living and leave the kids to the extended family, something like that.
right.
Okay, okay. And so, so going through all of these levels of abuse, so would you say that on some level you were emotionally neglected?
Yes, yes, I can say that.
Okay, so let's just outline panel one wounds. Panel one wounds would be lacking a father. I would say that is a significant wound. Emotional neglect, that is a significant wound. Was there any physical abuse?
Um, Not really, you know, because I'm something. Maybe this is significant
Okay.
point to make, but I
Mm-hmm.
am African American,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, in the African American community, uh, the way children are reared, um, it might be considered abuse in or abusive in other cultures, other
Okay.
races.
Okay.
But so I was physically chastised, but I don't know if I would call it abuse. It's hard to. It's kind of something you have to unpack. But yeah,
Was it more like a slap on the butt kind of thing, or was it a beating with a stick, or what level would you call it?
yeah, yeah. I say like beating with switches and belts.
Okay.
Uh, you know, you know, more on the butt. You know, not like slaps in the face or anything like that. You
And
know, I have gotten those a couple of times, but it wasn't. You know, that was when I was older. But it was the typical you know
okay,
hit on the butt.
and I just want to mention this that okay, so there are different levels, obviously, and you're probably not nightmaring from it, from my
Right.
understanding of your experience of it. Sometimes people say no big deal because culturally that's acceptable. I lean more on the side of just because something's culturally acceptable doesn't mean that it's mentally healthy. Okay, makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just kind of put that over there. Okay, so some level of that. Any verbal abuse, name calling.
Yes, I can say that. But,
Okay, like what?
um, I'm trying to think. It wasn't a lot of it, but I distinctly remember being called ugly at one point
You
or
were
one time.
called what?
Ugly.
Ugly. Okay, you were
Hmm.
called ugly. Who said that to you?
It was a guardian figure.
Okay. And so these are things that we're going to discuss in more detail when we come to panel number 3, because definitely when a child is told something by an older maternal or paternal type figure, they're going to take that very seriously because we self-define, right? You self-define according to what people say to you. So if they say that you're ugly, guess what you're going to believe? Okay,
That I'm ugly.
right, makes sense. Okay, so this is part of the devaluation process. And as you know, I talk a lot about cultural wounds, and the African American wound runs deep. And so I'm wondering if there were any racial wounds that were overlaid on top of everything else we're talking about.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I was of the darker complexion, and
Okay,
some of my siblings were lighter skinned.
okay.
And I remember that used to be an insecurity of mine, like being darker skinned.
Oh, okay, so let's also consider that. Were you ever name called racial comments about your skin color, your features, anything like this?
Not by family that I can remember, but I was name called,
In school?
called racial names. Yeah, in school.
In
Yeah.
school. Okay. Okay. So we're talking about all of these wounds, not only within the family, but also the cultural wounds. And we're going to consider all of that in terms of what it is that whenever we do something, whether it be overeating or gambling or getting involved in some sort of a sexual release kind of behavior, we're really trying to self medicate. Make sense?
Yes.
We just want to feel better. That's it. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to release tension. We want to release anger. We want to release pent up sexuality. So we're going to trace back your sexual connections to the cause. And then we can start to understand how all of the dots connect and why is it that today you're suffering from sexual addiction. And that's how we're going to do this. A lot of dot connecting. Okay? So any history of child sexual abuse, anything like that in your history?
Yes.
Okay, by a family member?
Um, no, not a family member. Like a family friend.
A family friend. Okay, what age did this start?
Um, I can't exactly remember. It was so early, but maybe like 5 or 6,
Okay,
somewhere around
okay. And were there repeated incidents, or one or two, or what do you make of
there.
that?
It was probably like 1 or 2.
One or two. Okay. Were you told not to tell or else? Were you threatened in any way? Do you remember any of the
No,
feelings?
no, I don't remember being threatened. I don't remember that.
Okay. And how old was the person perpetrating this?
They were like a adolescent. I don't even think they were 18 yet.
About 18? Okay.
No, I said I don't think they were 18 yet. I think they were like in that adolescent teenage stage.
I see. And did you say a friend, like a friend of the family, something like this?
Right, right. So, close to the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember feeling aroused by this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's natural. I remember taking a seminar on sexual abuse and the guilt and the shame people carry with them about it. And I remember a story about a nurse who worked with victims of rape and incest and so on, and she was explaining to one little girl that if she were peeling an onion, wouldn't her tear duct start to release tears? Wouldn't she be, quote, crying over the onion? Right? Okay. So if we're touched in the area of our genitals are going to react. It's just natural. Okay. And then it's what we make it to mean that begins to start encoding into the fiber of our being and starts defining how we interpret these experiences. So at age 5, you're supposed to be concentrating on school and friends and sports and all of that. And if you're overly sexually stimulated, what do you think gets set in a neurological pattern in your brain?
It's probably probably a significant part of my imagination.
Of course. So it's going to start a reaction forming, and maybe you'll start fantasizing about things, right? And so now sex becomes something that's overstimulating to you, because a 5 or 6-year-old isn't really built to have a large bandwidth, so to speak, for sexuality. It's too soon.
Right.
Okay, so can you see how you were probably overstimulated at that age? And then do you remember after that masturbating and exploring your penis and spending more time in that area?
No.
No?
I can remember, not really. I can just remember one incident, but that's about it.
Okay, okay.
Not so much at that age.
Okay, and so, okay, skip forward to what about now? What's your suffering? What's your pain? What incentivized you to go through this process?
It's I say like compulsive masturbation, pornography, watching pornography,
Okay,
hooking up with random people.
okay, okay. So you can see that there's a need to continue that pathway of stimulation, right? And you're taking a lot of pathways of porn, masturbation, hooking up with other people. And can you see the separation beginning to happen between your mind, your body, and your soul?
Yes, for
Okay,
sure.
right? Because when we're in a loving relationship, then ideally, and I speak about in an ideal way, we're in panel number 7. I'm just jumping ahead here to paradigm shift, to synergy. Everything's synergized, everything's in balance, and we're connected back to our light, meaning that our mind and our body and our soul is at one. And when we're fractured off, we're disintegrated, and we're in panel, I'll call it panel number 5, just metaphorically speaking. We're splintered off into this piece is our sexuality, and this piece is our intellect, and that piece is our heart, and it just doesn't all come together. So can you see that the sexual addiction is a way of splitting off from your authentic self?
Right. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Right, and it's very painful, because what does our soul want? Our soul wants to be loved. Our soul wants safety. Our soul wants to merge with other human beings that are like-minded, that are going to feed us. And so in terms of sexual addiction, and you're in a best position to answer this, is this a plus or a minus to your life?
It's a minus.
It's a minus. Right. So instead of synergy instead of the light and in a kind of a co-creation, if you will, of your mind, body, soul, you're having a splitting off. And as a result of it, instead of creating more light, it's vampiring you and shutting down your light and creating a lot of darkness in your life. Wouldn't you say
Yes.
that describes your experience?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to be talking a lot about boundaries, and one of the things that we know, because you told me, is that you were boundary violated. Make sense? You were boundary violated. You should not have been touched at age 5 or 6 by an older person who did not have permission to touch your body. Did your mother know that you were inappropriately touched?
No.
Did you tell anybody?
Nope.
Did you know it was inappropriate?
Not at that time.
Did it
Like
did it
time
feel
years later.
years later? Okay, so when did you happen upon the concept that was not okay?
Yeah, I was probably like uh, in high school before I really, um, yeah, before it uh, clicked. I made sense that
Okay.
that was abuse.
Oh, okay. And was this a female that
Yes.
touched you? It was a male that touched you. Okay.
Uh,
Okay. And if you don't mind sharing your sexual orientation, if you're comfortable with that.
yeah, gay, homosexual.
Okay, gay. Okay, and I had a whole show on gay, nature versus nurture. I suggest that everybody watch that show. We had a gay young man on there. He was very, very vulnerable in terms of talking openly about whether he felt that his homosexuality was nature versus nurture. And there's no good answer to that. Let's see, the quote I have in my book is from Mehmet Oz, and the quote is something like genetics load the gun and then nurture pulls the trigger. Okay, so let's just keep it in mind and just keep that in the back of your mind, that your first sexual stimulatory experience was with a male.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And so this was something that you didn't know what to make of it, and then later on you found out that this was not exactly a great way of dealing with a 5 or 6 year old kid. Did you ever tell anybody about it?
Yeah. I think I told another relative who was around my age, and
Okay.
that was pretty much it. And the person asked me why did they do that, and I
Okay.
didn't really have an answer, and
Mm-hmm.
that's as far as that went.
Okay.
I never said anything.
Okay. All right. And so let's jump again to the here and now, which is that there's a level of pain and suffering. And so people are probably wondering, well, it must feel good to have sex. It must feel good to watch porn. It must feel good to masturbate. So what's the problem? So what's the problem?
Right.
So
Yeah.
where does it lose its luster for you? If it's feeling good, where does it start draining draining your spirit, your mind, body, soul?
Um, because, and I know there's this whole debate. Um, it's among professionals there can whether there's such a thing as sex addiction or porn addiction, and like even some professionals say there's no such thing as you know uh, or it's not wrong to watch porn. There's the morality argument.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
for me, when I indulge in these behaviors, like I don't feel good about myself. Like I feel guilty, feel ashamed, I regret it. I don't feel like I'm honoring myself.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right.
the
Let
loss of self-respect. Yeah.
self-respect. Okay, I just want to back up for a minute because I want to discover with you, does this have anything to do with morals, ethics, your religious beliefs? Is that something that gets triggered, and does the shame and guilt arise out of some of your belief systems?
Yes, part of it. Yes.
Okay, so part of it is yes. And then let's go to the other side, which is that is there anything aside from your religious beliefs? Maybe your belief is that you shouldn't do that, the old don't should on yourself. I shouldn't do this, or I should do that, or I shouldn't be, or I should be. Okay, if we put that aside, then is there still something that's not okay about it for you, that doesn't feel right for you?
Oh yeah, putting the religious, because like I said, I kind of got away from the religion so much. Like I said, that's still kind of default. Uh, it's a part of me, if that makes any sense. But
Yeah.
um, I'm more into the spiritual stuff, like different spiritual belief, philosophies.
Okay.
And but even with that, and part of me getting away from religion was because of me being homosexual, or that being my orientation,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I felt there was such a conflict between my sexuality and my religion, or
Yes.
religious beliefs, that
Yes.
there was no way of reconciling that. So I had to kind of put that to the side
Okay.
in order to find out what my real convictions were.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think that was wise, because you can't go against yourself, can you? Right? And whether it's
Right.
nature or nurture, you are who you are. Your sexual orientation at this point in time is set. And so if you're going to ascribe to some rules and roles that don't support you, it's going to be really, really painful. There's going to be a huge cognitive dissonance, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
Right. So I think in order to reflect your the best of your best, you have to select ways to be of utmost support to yourself. Okay, so going back into the here and now, so what is just not working about this for you?
Um, it's for the lack of intimacy.
Okay.
I think because like hooking up with these random people, I have different hookup sites that I go to,
Okay.
and they could be used for dating, but um, they're not really geared toward that. I mean, some of them that you go on, I mean, the ads are explicit porn, so how
Mm-hmm.
much,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how much dating are you going to get from a site like that? So,
Sure. Right.
uh, and you can find, I've found friends, platonic friends on
Mm-hmm.
sites like that, but for the most part, they're used for hooking up, and so I have had those experiences with hooking up with guys, and but like I said, it's a lack of intimacy, and then sometimes I'll get my emotions. The goal is to just to feel good, like you said, but then I'll end up really liking the person, and wanting that person to stay around, stick around, and but they'll ghost. A lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with that term,
Yes,
ghosting,
I
but
am very familiar with that term.
yeah, that's a lot of that goes on, and
Yes.
so I end up feeling a lot of times I end up feeling like like something was taken from me, even though I gave it willingly, but I feel like oh, they got a part of me and just ran with it, and I can never get that back. You know, but
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Yeah. And I think you're probably reading it accurately, because we're very sensitive beings. I don't know if anyone is really equipped to compartmentalize like that. So I'll just put up panel 5 for a visual of compartmentalization. Okay, so there's our body, and there's our soul, and there's our emotions. It doesn't work that way. And so when you're having sex for the sake of sex, I believe that that I believe that there's a motive for that you want to have a level of intimacy, because even though you're just engaging in sexual activity, you're kind of hoping that they're going to stick around, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the painful part, that you're just not a machine. Sorry, Max, you're not a
Yeah.
machine, okay? And you cannot just split apart your sexuality from your being. And that speaks to your mental health, that you're not supposed to be doing that, because that's not mental health. And so being a mental health professional, I always look at things through the lens of, is this healthy? Is this supporting your mind, body, soul? And if the answer is yes, then we're probably in the department of the light, mental health. And if it's not, then we're probably in the department of the darkness, the shadows. And in the book and on my shows, I talk about the WTF. And what is the WTF? It is Freud's repetition principle. And the concept goes something like, if we don't complete the past, we're doomed to repeat it. Okay, so we're going to take a look at how you're repeating your past, because let's start connecting some of the dots and seeing some common themes here. Okay, so what do we know about your blueprint, your past? Let's go through your panel 1 wounds.
Okay.
Okay, so now what do you know?
I know that my father was absent.
Yep.
I know that boundaries were violated.
Yep.
There was verbal abuse,
Yep.
um, as well as a little physical abuse.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Not, not that I can think of. I do know that I realize now that there was neglect in my childhood. I was neglected emotionally, and
Okay. All right. So let's put that together. And of course, the obvious, the sexual abuse, right? The
right.
obvious. Okay. So
Hmm.
let's put that blueprint together. If we are building a house, for example, and we put a blueprint together for that home, and we draw it out and we show that this pillar is missing and the foundation here is a little bit cracked and the roof doesn't exactly protect from the weather and so on and so forth. Let's take a look at your blueprint and see what this blueprint is showing us and why you're in the mental state that you're in. So we've got neglect, we've got abuse by an older male, we have some level of physical abuse, we have loneliness, right?
Yes.
We have the boundary violations. We have a mother that's not exactly able to be emotionally nurtured because available because she's not being nurtured herself. Okay, so let's start connecting the dots, and let's take that blueprint and see what that blueprint is going to create.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay, so could you see the WTF? You're lonely, yes.
Yes.
Boundary violations, yes.
Yes.
Physical abuse, because even though it feels good, it doesn't feel good at the end of the day.
Yes.
Lack of true intimacy.
Right.
Okay, anything else I'm missing here? How about some level of physical abuse during these sexual encounters? Is there any sadomasochism involved?
Uh, Sometimes they're mildly.
Okay.
Mild. Yeah.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. You were mildly physically abused. You were abused by a male. You were neglected. You didn't have any real emotional intimacy, and also you probably felt that you were ugly, and therefore you devalued your worth because you think you're ugly, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then your worth, let's put the cultural overlay on it, African American, and being devalued for that as well, and being devalued for darker skin, correct?
Right.
Okay, so let's take all of that and start to see why we have what we have. And you tell me what you're seeing here in terms of the repetition principle.
Right. Yeah, it's probably a pattern or a cycle that keeps repeating itself.
Absolutely. Okay, so why are we doing this? Because all of this blueprint is based on a lie, meaning misinformation, meaning many generations of psychopathology from your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, and as Marie Bowen puts it, multi-generational transmission process of mental breakdown. And so tag you're it. So here you are bearing the wounds of your family, multi-generations of family, multi-generations of loneliness, multi-generations of not feeling good enough, multi-generations of physical abuse or emotional abuse, cultural abuse, multi-generations. So can you see how the sexual addiction is just a repeat of it all? And it plays into the hand of everything that's been set up, that the cards have been set, cards have been put on the table, and now you're just playing them out.
Right.
Okay? And I'm saying to you that as we begin to unravel this process and understand that that is not who you are on a soul level, we are not our wounds. We may hurt from our wounds, we may react to our wounds, but we're not our wounds. So let's move on to panel number 2, your reaction to your wounds. What do you think your reaction is? And by reaction, I mean our brain is firing off like a fight or flight. So reactions might be some level of pain, some level of anxiety. So what do you think your reactions are to your wounds?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay.
Um. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking anxiety, fear of loss. So look what you're doing. You're
Yes.
hooking up and then you're losing, and you're hooking up and you're losing, and you're
Yes.
repeating this. This is really, really, really painful. And I think this is the crux of your pain, is that you're getting close on some level and there's a fantasy that they'll stay even though you know intellectually it's just a sexual encounter. I think there's a fantasy that they're going to stay. And then as a result of that, you start getting a little bit attached or fantasizing
Yes.
that they'll come back, and then they ghost you. Well, geez, ghost really is a definition of somebody that you've been with for a while and then they disappear. These people have not even been with you for 2 seconds, right? In
Right.
the span of time frame, correct? But
Right.
that's another WTF, because how long were these father figures in your life for?
Right.
Okay, and I really want you to see that these experiences are literally opening up your childhood wounds, and that's why you're suffering. And then here's the worst part of it, opening up your childhood wounds and giving you some booby prize of satisfaction, which is the orgasm, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then leaving you with less light. And then what do you have to do to pick up the dopamine and the neurotransmitter high? You've got to do it again. And then you
Do
do
it
it again
again.
and again and again and again. Okay? So there are a lot of components to it. There's that what the Freud thing going on, and then there's the breakdown of the opening up of the childhood wounds, and then there's the addiction part, which is the drug. It's like drinking, you know? I don't want to feel what I feel, so I'll have a drink, and now I feel even worse, and now that I feel even worse, so I have to have another drink. Now that you feel
Right.
even worse, you have to have another encounter, which will make you feel good for 2 seconds,
Right.
right? The intermittent reinforcement pattern, which is the most powerful reinforcing schedule on the planet. Las Vegas makes a killing on this. You put some money in the slot machine, you get out a little trickle of something, and then you get excited, or you get really angry that you're losing, and then you'll invest more and more and more energy into the system, and you're drained. And that's you. You keep investing energy into this system gone wrong. Why? Because your original blueprint was a system gone wrong. Not your fault. You see that?
True. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll use a couple of more minutes here to see how you encoded all this information, because this encoding defines your self-esteem, defines your view of yourself in the world. So what do you think you encoded here about yourself?
That I'm used up.
That you're used up? Okay.
Um, mm, Worthless or have very little worth.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And yeah.
okay, so make some notes on it, and of course you'll get to see your own video after the show if you want. And so what I want you to take away from this is that you've encoded all of the messages that you've heard, that you're ugly, and that you're not worth sticking around for. Your own father modeled that for you. He modeled not worth sticking around for. How does a child interpret that? Well, egocentrically, meaning from a self-centered point of view. I must not be good enough. I am not enough. I am not lovable. Does that ring true?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And just want to say, I guess my reason for even delving into this is because I've felt like I have been losing more and more and more of myself that I can't get back, and it's like now it's on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's like my sexuality has a life of its own. It's like I can't even, and sometimes I'll hope that a guy turns me down because I can't do it for myself.
Yeah.
Like I'll hope they cut it off.
And that's
Right, so.
because an addiction is just that. It's got a life unto itself, and that's why people go to meetings like SAA. And if anybody out there is interested in a meeting, an SAA meeting, at least check it out. And part of the philosophy of these anonymous meetings is that you declare that your drug is more powerful than who you are. And you can certainly see that it has a life of its own, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so people go through de-addiction, they go through detox. And so it's not enough just to detox without knowing the cause of it and dismantling at the causal level. And also, if you have an addiction, you have to address the addiction part of it, because we've got to dial down the dopamine, so to speak. We've got to redirect the neural pathways. Okay, so can you see how you took this blueprint, incorporated it into the fiber of your being, reacted to it, and encoded things like you're worthless and you're ugly and you're not worth loving, and your worldview is that people are going to leave you because your father already role modeled that, and that there's not a lot of nurturing out there because your mother role modeled that everybody that she gets involved with and even has a child with will leave her. And so there's no permanence. Okay, there's just no permanence. Okay, so this is really not your soul. I'm going to repeat this to you. We are not our wounds. This is not who you are. This is how you have come to be as a result of this system gone wrong. And we're going to start dismantling this system gone wrong. And I'm going to be out for, I think, a week or two. I'll announce when I'm back, and then we're going to continue this. And Max, I'm not dropping you in between. You're going to reach out to me, and I'm going to follow up with you, okay? Because I'm committed to you're getting better, and I'll reach out to you tomorrow so that we could have a little plan together, okay? And then we'll be doing panel 4, 5, 6. I want you to read the book, track the chaos. And for those of you who want to know which book is he reading, well, there it is. Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. You can get it on Amazon. And please review it if you like it. And also, for those of you who are even remotely thinking of coming to the seminar, the Mind Map seminar, it comes with the video. The video that I put together, it comes with the book. And for those of you who are really wanting to come and need some financial aid, scholarship, reach out to me. The team will make it happen. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of September 14, 15, and 16. And tomorrow's the last day that I'm offering the scholarship, so please do call, and we'll try to make it very doable for you, okay? So, Max, I will speak with you soon, and you'll be back on the show to do panel number 4, 5, 6. So read up on that part of the mind map and the Be the Cause book. And I'm going to do a Shrink That song. You could stay on air. Maybe you'll add a sentence or two of comment here. It's called Sex Addicted by, who is it by? I wanted to say who it's by. Geez. Be Knighted, Sex Addicted. There's a strange feeling invading me and all my being. It prevents me from all kinds of thoughts without humanity. Inaccessible things torture me, gnaw my entrails. Sound familiar? Can you relate to that?
Yes.
Okay. This is a really powerful words. I'm a slave to this unknown entity, a burning demon watching me in every place I can go. An external part makes my life unbearable. My last moments of peace are when I see it bleed, as I pierce it through and through. My reason is drowning in an absence of delight. So even though you want delight, there's no real delight here. There's this strange feeling invading me and all my being. It prevents me from all kinds of thoughts. So it's taking over. There's the addiction. Without humanity, inaccessible things torture me, gnaw my entrails. Disharmonic nature between human being and an animal kingdom. The animal kingdom being the addicted spirit, and the disharmonic meaning the split off parts of your mind, body, and soul. Blind as the soul as you rise in bestiality, psychotic world ruled by twisted sexuality. Nowhere to hide if you need to escape. I mutilate. As the blood runs from the sores, I feel guilty. The days are gone, only stay the scars of my wrath, hidden in silence, followed by its presence. Can't be delivered from my own existence. Monomaniac. Tomorrow the time will come and the wounds will be closed. The constant persecutions will never end, no more. Once again, I won't be alone and I will lose the control, and you'll take the entire place in me, my dark tormentor. And Max, this is what we're going to be in unwinding. Got it?
Yes.
Okay, this is the reaction and the encoding. This person, whoever wrote this song, was probably trapped in his own addiction. And so we're creating a pathway out. Okay? Lots of lies to dismantle, lots of blueprints to dismantle, but we're going to do it.
Okay.
Okay? So I'll be in touch with you. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And again, please be in touch about the seminar, the mind map, the video series, anything you need from myself and the team. And thank you very much for tuning in. And Max, a special thank you to you for being vulnerable and sharing your experience with sex addiction. Good night, everybody.